Already going. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am going to be super quick and get my side out of the way because we are all here to hear from Nehtra. She is with the Texas Workforce Commission, but she's going to be explaining Title II disability benefits to us. And this is a nationwide program. So I know we've got at least one person with us from Michigan today. Randy, hey there. I've spoken with you before. So if you're not in Texas and you're listening to today's webinar, that is perfectly fine. We welcome you. We at Consolidated Planning Group work all across the United States, so we can help you no matter where you are. A couple of quick things before we get started. I want to let you know that we are in webinar mode, which means that we cannot see or hear the participants, but we know that you're out there and we would love to hear your questions and comments. So the easiest way for me to watch the questions and comments and still run the webinar is for you to put those in the chat box for me. Hi, Penny in Illinois. So any questions or comments that you have, put them in the chat box and we will get to those for you. The other thing I want to let you know is, we are recording this webinar. We record all of our webinars and we put them on our YouTube channel. So after you're done here today, you will receive an email that has a link to the YouTube channel, and you're also going to receive the slides from today's webinar. And if you don't get that, you can feel free to reach out to me and I'll make sure that you get that. So Consolidated Planning Group, I know most of the people in here, this is not your first webinar with us, but just in case you're joining us for the first time today, I want to let you know that we've been in business for over 30 years as a financial planning firm. Between 5 and 10 years ago, the firm kind of turned towards serving families with special needs loved ones. And ever since then, that's been our primary focus, is that we work with individuals, with families where there is an individual with some kind of intellectual or developmental disability. We've got life insurance experience, financial services, of course, but we are also members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. I am a chartered special needs consultant through the American College of Financial Services, and we're National Social Security advisors. So we are in the Houston area, but we work all across Texas and all across the United States. And what is so important for you to realize is that you might be having a hard time finding people who are true experts in this area. And maybe there's a lot of noise. I was talking to Nehtra before this webinar started. There's a lot of noise. There's helpful family members and helpful friends who just, they mean well, but maybe they don't necessarily know your situation, or they don't necessarily know all the rules and how to properly advocate for you and help you. We at Consolidated Planning Group, we do know those rules and nuances to helping families with special needs loved one. And out of the entire United States, fewer than 200 financial planning firms. It's less than 0.1% of all the financial planning firms who truly understand this stuff. So you're in the right space when you want to talk about helping your loved ones succeed and have a great life, planning for their future, and making sure that you're setting aside enough money for them to be taken care of for the rest of their life, not just the rest of your life. Thinking about what's going to happen after high school, there are great residential options, community options, vocational and educational options. And we just want to encourage you to look into those early and to start planning now. Now is the right time to get going. And we do offer a completely free consultation with Consolidated Planning Group to go over some of these things with you, to answer your questions about benefits and about what you should be doing for your loved one, to give you general guidance and advice, and then we'll tell you about who we are and how we work. Now, I've already put my contact info in the chat box, and I just did it again so that you can reach out to me to schedule your free consultation with Consolidated Planning Group. But I do want to turn everything over to Ms. Davis-Moore because you're here to listen to her, not me. So I'm going to let her take as much time as she needs, I hope. Nehtra, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being here with us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be back again. Um, Today, we are going to focus on the Title II disability programs that Social Security has. The first part series that I did, we had to do it in two parts because that's where we focused on SSI. So now we're switching gears to the Title II programs, which are much more complicated and not just more complicated. There's a lot of moving wheels when it comes to the Title II disability programs. And the best thing that I can provide advice wise, anytime you find out or figure out, right, that someone is receiving a Title II type of benefit, please put in your mind that benefits counseling from the right entity is so important. And when I say benefits counseling from the right entity, that could be someone who is through what's known as our WIPA grants. We have community work incentive coordinators across the nation that can provide benefits counseling. If you're here in Texas, vocational rehab, my agency, you can actually come to vocational rehab for benefits counseling alone. So please, if you know that you receive a Title II disability-based benefit, please be considerate and know that benefits counseling will empower you in ways that you never thought were possible. So just keep that in mind in relation to, I'm going to explain a lot today, but just know that you don't have to figure it all out on your own. Okay. So things are going to seem very confusing as I'm speaking today because it's just Title II alone, but there's people who know about this stuff. You just got to know the right people to go to. Um, and I see a question in there already. I think Mr. Frazier, SSDI is one of the Title II disability programs. Yes. So the Title II disability programs, they are connected to someone who has, as you've heard it, paid into the system. And when we say paid into the system, that means it could be yourself that is paid into a system and into the system, and you're able to draw a cash benefit yourself, or you're related to someone who has paid enough into the system where you are able to draw a cash benefit from that family member's record, or you married someone who paid enough into the system and you're able to draw from that spouse's or ex-spouse's record, depending on how long you guys were married. The big thing to remember with the disability Title II programs is SGA, substantial gainful activity, is where things really matter. So oftentimes, remember I said on the SSI side, people always think about SGA when it comes to SSI. SGA doesn't matter on the SSI side, but I want you to know that SGA matters when we're talking about Title II benefits. The Title II applications, all three of the Title II benefit programs, they do require folks to go through the sequential evaluation process. So that is the same, right? So if you're over 18 and you put an application in, know that those over 18 applications are going to go through that SSA sequential evaluation process. And if you joined me in the other sessions, I had said that that sequential evaluation, it essentially keeps it a fair playing field on how our Social Security is looking at the over 18 applications. Okay, because a lot of times we'll get customers who say, "Well, that claims rep in the Social Security office, I just don't think they like me and they denied my claim." That's not how it works. Okay, they're looking at that sequential evaluation, all of the over 18 applications that go through that sequential evaluation. So please keep that in mind. There is a fair playing field when it comes to how Social Security and the Disability Determination Services looks at applications. Now, let's talk about substantial gainful activity, because substantial gainful activity and Title II go hand in hand. Essentially, what SGA is, right? It's a dollar amount that changes every year, okay? And a lot of people ask me, well, how does Social Security come up with the SGA amounts year to year? To myself as a benefits counselor, and kind of getting in the nooks and crannies of the details of this stuff, I had to embrace that, and this is going to sound crazy. I think that there are magical gnomes in the original Social Security basement that are like these wicked, amazing mathematicians who crunch these numbers year to year. And that's how they come up with it. That's what I had
Nobody
to.
really knows.
Nobody really knows, right? But we do know that it works, okay? And we see these numbers because these are the efforts to protect those trusts that we have, to where we're drawing the benefits, seeing the benefits being drawn from. So I know there's a lot right now, a lot of worry for the integrity and the strength of our Social Security Administration system. But please know that there are some really good mathematicians that were built in. They thought about things, right? And so as you can see some of the numbers changing year to year, just know that a lot of thought goes into that to try to help protect the overall trust, okay, when we're talking about where those Title II disability benefits pull from. And SGA is a big factor of that. Because if we didn't have a set limit, think about it, right? If we were just out here free-for-alling, then we maybe wouldn't be able to get as much, or maybe we could. But in order to get higher benefits, there's one thing we would have to pay more of. And it's a word that we don't like to discuss a lot, but it starts with the letter T and ends with axis. I'll just put that out there, okay? But SGA is what matters on the Title II side. And it starts mattering, I will tell you, after the first stage of work. And you're probably like, what does she mean by the first stage of work? I'm going to jump into the stages of work here shortly. But just know that the SGA level for this year is, for those who are not statutorily blind, it's 1,620. And for those who are statutorily blind, it's 2,700. Okay. So basically how SGA works, if it's after that first stage of work and someone earns at or above SGA, they're not eligible to receive their cash benefit. That is why we have SGA. That's why SGA matters on the Title II side. So essentially, when we're looking at the Title II disability programs, it's either all or nothing. You either get a cash benefit or you don't. And it's tied to that SGA factor. Okay. Now, let's talk about, next slide. Did I have that slide in there twice? There we go. Yes. Okay. Let's talk about the insurance that's attached on the Title II side. It's different than SSI. The Title II disability programs are connected to Medicare. And the one thing to keep in mind with Medicare, well, maybe two things. And as easy as I like to put it, you got to wait for it and you got to pay for it when it comes to Medicare. Okay. And so when I say wait for it, there is a 24-month waiting period for Medicare to kick in. So you might be eligible to receive one of the Title II benefits, right? But the insurance is not instant like it is on the SSI side, and it's not free. So that's where I got the phrase, on Medicare, you got to wait for it, you got to pay for it. 24-month waiting period, and there's a premium that's attached with it. So it's not free like Medicaid is. Okay. Now, for those who may have difficulties paying for their Medicare premium, okay, there are what's known as the Medicare savings programs. However, that is administered by our Medicaid agency, which is HHSC here in Texas. Now, MSPs are available across the nation. So for those of you who are out of state, okay, You do have Medicare savings programs available. It is very important for you to figure out which agency within your respective state operates your Medicare savings program. Typically, it's going to be your Medicaid, your state Medicaid agency. But those, if you've seen one Medicaid agency in one state, you've only seen that one, because Medicaid operates much differently across state lines. So for those of you in Texas, I can definitely speak to Medicare savings programs and resources here in Texas. For those of you who are out of state, I would say you can Google Medicare savings programs. You can just go to the CMS website, or you can even look up SHIP. It's SHIP. That's the acronym, and that'll bring up the national page for the Medicare savings programs. Next
I'm
slide.
going to put that in the chat box. So ship dot.
It's SHIP. I'd have to look up the website, or if you want to look it up real quick, and you could plug it, but it's SHIP. If you type in SHIP Medicare, the national page will come up.
Okay.
But yeah, it stands for, I think, State Health Insurance Plan, maybe. We love our acronyms, right? But yes, but that would be the resource for the national to get connected for Medicare savings program nationally. Now, next slide.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, this one. So I mentioned when we first started talking was being related to someone to be able to draw one of these benefits. Okay. And so essentially for those who let's say something happens, something tragic happens. And it happens a lot, unfortunately, for some of the customers that I see that come to VR, where they're so young and they'll be receiving SSDI. Like, how is that possible? Well, essentially, the younger someone is, the sooner that they could receive SSDI, because they'll be able to qualify for it if they've been working and earning credits. Because, for example, someone who's under the age of 24, they only need 6 credits or a year and a half of working in a 3-year period, ending when SSA determines that their disability onset has occurred, to draw a cash benefit from their own work record. So the younger someone is, essentially, and something tragic does happen where they're not able to work, they could begin receiving Title II SSDI from their, which is from their own work record. Next slide. Okay. So, and there's a few bullets on this one. To get a Title II cash benefit, okay, again, there has to be enough work earnings to draw, and enough work credits to draw a cash benefit, okay? And of course, you've got to meet, the definition of having a disability by Social Security's definition. And just to note again that definition of having a disability within Social Security, it is pretty strict. It's very, very strict, actually. A lot of people don't realize that, but it truly is. It's I feel like this at the state level, we tend to be a little more lenient with the definition versus at the Social Security federal level. Now,
and there is, just want to throw this out there. There is something called the Social Security Blue Book. If you're not sure whether or not your loved one qualifies as being disabled under the eyes of Social Security, you can Google Social Security Blue Book and look up each and every diagnosis that your person has, and it will tell you what you need to show to prove that they have this qualification.
Yes, the Blue Book is very helpful. And all that to also say, make sure you save all your records, because if you do go through the process of applying, guess what they're going to ask for? A whole bunch of records. So make sure you save everything over the years. Now, in relation to the different Title II programs, right? There's 2 of them here on the screen. The first one, SSDI, which most of the time we're so used to hearing SSDI. And that is when someone is drawing a disability-based benefit from their own work record. Um, our CDB-DACs, our childhood disability beneficiaries, disabled adult children, is another one. And those young adults or older adults, they are related to, or they have a parent that has either retired, passed away, or is receiving SSDI themselves, and they have an adult child who meets the definition of having a disability, and that adult child is drawing a Title II benefit from that parent's work record. So that parent that has either retired, passed away, or is receiving SSDI themselves. That is when we will see what's known as our CDB DACs. And CDB DACs do fall under the Title II programs. And so that's important to know, because a lot of times our parents don't realize they may have a child who's been receiving SSI all this time. And let's say they turn 18 or 19, or maybe they've been 18 or 19, and then all of a sudden a parent has retired, or a parent passed away or started receiving DI. And you're like, wait, I didn't realize that my adult child's benefit just changed. It's very major to notice that this change has occurred, because when you go from SSI to Title II, and sometimes in many cases, it can be both, where you've got SSI and you're a CDB DAC. When you go through these program rules, you've got to notice that there's a change, okay? So if you've gone from SSI just to being a CDB DAC, that means you've been following the Title 16 SSI rules to now needing to understand how to follow the Title II rules, okay? Now, let's say for those who might be receiving both, a combination of SSI and CDB DAC, right? That means you got to follow both rules at the same time. We call those sets of beneficiaries concurrents. And concurrent beneficiaries are much more complicated. And I think I'm due to come back to do concurrent series. So we'll save that for another day. But just know that that is possible, because I think I see a comment in there about someone who's receiving both. So just hold that thought for the receiving both, okay? So I just detailed, right, the differences between these three Title II programs. But these three Title II programs are based on receiving a disability benefit, okay? And there's work activity, work history that's being drawn from that work activity, work history, but each of them are different based on, it's either your own work record, you have a parent record that you're drawing from, or you're drawing from a spouse's record. Now let's talk about the disabled widow, widower, spouse. This is very, it's not a big population where we see disabled widowers, okay? However, because we're in Texas and Texas is big, I can tell you I see disabled widowers more often than anybody else probably would in any other state. And the reason why the population isn't so big is because of the age range, okay? So disabled widowers are over 50 and not yet 65. So or to age 65. It's so weird how the age range for the disabled widower goes. But basically, if that spouse has been determined that they have a disability, okay, and they are related to a spouse that has paid enough into the system, and they're between these ages of 50 to 65, they could and will likely be drawing a disabled widower benefit from that spouse's record, okay? Sometimes survivor benefits and disabled widower benefits kind of can get confusing. So if you don't know the difference, come to the right folks and we'll help you sort it out. Also, too, a good thing that will tell you if you're a disabled widower versus just receiving a survivor's benefit, your award letter, your benefits verification award letter, it might seem like it's tricky in the language, but typically I can read a letter and tell you what type of benefit is. Or what benefits counselors, what we really love, it's a benefits plan inquiry known as the BPQY, and that will surely tell you as well. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the amount, right? Well, how much do we get in Title II cash benefits? Well, typically, one thing that we definitely know is Title II cash benefits are going to be higher than our SSI benefits. And so for us as benefits counselors, that is one clue. So I always say, well, when somebody says, I receive Social Security, one, they're not telling me much, right? But I always say, well, how much are you receiving? And typically, if someone says to me, oh, I get $967 every month, me as a benefits counselor, that's why I know and have to pay attention to the numbers each year as they change, because that tells me someone's on SSI. But if someone tells me that they receive $1,200 a month, for example, I kind of know that that's going to be under my bigger umbrella, my RSDI umbrella. It may be attached to our Title II disability programs. It may not, but that's why I'll need more information depending on the situation that a person is in. And then usually I can weed out if it falls under our Title II disability categories or not. Now, I can tell you the average Title II cash benefit, it does also change each year. And this year we're up to 1,580, which if we're looking at, the cost of living for many of us, that's not very high. It's definitely more than 967, but it's still not, it's not a lot, right? Let's be honest, it's not a lot. Now, a lot of folks ask me, well, how can I get more in a cash benefit? And then my answer is it starts with a T and ends with access. And then people typically get mad when I say that, but it's true. It really is true. Next slide. Okay. So the most important rule when it comes to Title II disability benefits, and it's directly attached to SGA. Remember, I said you either get a cash benefit or you don't. It's all or nothing. There's no in between. Like on the SSI side, right? On the SSI side, we have a mathematical formula monthly, and that SSI cash benefit can fluctuate. On the Title II side, you either get a cash benefit or you don't. Next slide. So now let's jump into the health. Yes.
Oh my gosh. And there's been some chat in the
Okay. Is there some questions I need to address before jumping into the stages?
I think you're going to come into it right now, because a lot of people want to know how do we report stuff? What do we need to report? How are those earnings calculated? Is it within the month or versus paycheck? And what do we do when we have that month that's extra pay? Okay, so with all those in your head.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump into it. Okay. So the how, right? The how Title II, these rules work on the Title II side. So determine how much someone can earn, right? Or if they're eligible to receive a cash benefit. We've got to know three things. We've got to know how much they're earning gross monthly, and what return to work stage an individual is in. And you're like, she keeps saying these stages of work. Don't worry, we're going to get there. And then if there's any possible work incentives or deductions that can be applied. And you'll see why that third one is an important one, because guess what that third one is tied to as well? SGA. So let's touch on our CDB DACs, because we have a lot of CDB DACs. Okay. Our baby boomers had their babies, and guess what? those babies are not babies anymore. And so we have a lot of CDB DACs in Texas. So, I mean, I pretty much work on CDB DAC cases pretty much daily, multiple in a day. So please, please, to my parents that are on right now, okay, listen to me when I say this. Benefits counseling is so crucial. It's so crucial. It's so crucial for your disabled adult child or your childhood disability beneficiary. Please, please get benefits counseling, especially if you are the representative payee. You will then be the one to get the benefits counseling on your adult child's behalf. Okay. It's very important. And I say it's very important.
Is that like when people apply and they call in and they talk to you guys, or do they have to call somebody special? Or
No, they could literally do like the Start My VR, like how they would regularly come to VR for services, and they can literally just come to VR if yes, obviously for employment, but because benefits counseling is a substantial service, you could literally come to VR for benefits counseling alone.
so that's how they get the benefits counseling is by Start My VR, and even if they're not looking for actual workplace related.
Yeah, because the thing about benefits counseling, it can open the door for you to understand the world of employment, right? Which is, what VR really is. It's connected to employment. And it can help, let's say somebody is already working, benefits counseling can help a person retain and sustain that employment. So that's why. So that's why it's a substantial service, because it can open the doors for employment and keep them closed and retain that, right? But for those who are CDB DAC, so we're looking at those who are over 18, whose disability occurred before they turned 22. And like I said earlier, either one or both parents have started to draw SSDI themselves from their own work record, or that parent or a parent has retired or passed away. Now, a lot of times, parents will ask me, well, how do we know which benefit? Like, let's say both parents retired, right? How do we know what my child will get? They're always going to get the higher benefit of the two. So it's not like they'll get a benefit from both. They'll always get whichever one's higher. So a CDB DAC will not be awarded to someone who has earned above or at or above SGA after age 22, even if the person only earned SGA in 1 month after turning age 22. So I get that sometimes where they're like, well, why aren't they a CDB DAC? And I'll start looking, and the first thing I'll ask, was there any work history? And I'll ask, well, how much did they earn? If it was over SGA at any point after they turn age 22, they're not going to be a CDB DAC. Now, the other very important rule, and I deal with this rule regularly, CDB DACs and the marriage rule. I want you to keep this rule in your head. CDB DACs have a marriage rule. And you're like, a marriage rule? Like, what do you mean? Okay, this is a very wackadoodle rule. Okay, wackadoodle. But if a CDB DAC marries someone who is receiving a benefit outside of, I'll typically, it's really the RSDI umbrella, but if they're marry someone who gets SSI, for example, their benefits are going to be terminated. If they marry someone who doesn't receive any benefit, right? Like let's say they don't receive SSDI, there's not a DWIB or another CDB DAC, their benefits are going to terminate. And oftentimes people say, well,
It looks
can you
like
still hear? Can you
there
still
you
hear me?
are.
My
Yep, you just
computer,
froze for a second, but you're back, but your
uh,
camera's on.
my computer just went completely black.
Okay, well, we can hear you. We can't see you, but
Okay.
we can hear you.
I
So
know
I would
everything,
say,
everything just went black. Let me see. Let me see if I can turn my video back on. Is it? Well, I don't know if it's coming back on, but tell me if it does. Can you still hear me though?
yes, we can hear you. Okay, so as long as we can hear you,
We're good. Okay.
we're good. Oh,
All right. So if they marry outside of that, okay, then they're going to lose those benefits and there's no appeal rights. So oftentimes I get a question, well, what if a CDBDAC does get married and then they divorce later on? Do they get them back? No, they don't. This is a very rigid, straightforward rule that is not going to change. And oftentimes people ask me, well, why is it like that? Remember how I mentioned the gnomes in the original Social Security Administration building? That's got to be where that rule comes from,
mhm.
because I cannot explain the rhyme for that reason, but it is a very, very strict rule. So if you've got a CDB DAC, if they are in a relationship, we're not saying don't be in a relationship. We're just saying be my it's one of the questions you got to ask when you're dating. Okay, you got to ask if someone what benefit, if one is receiving, what benefit they're receiving.
Well,
Okay.
and it's not just that, because also if two people are receiving benefits, you would think that they would get two people with disabilities who are married receiving the benefits under SSI, because if they get married, they lose this completely, right? But if they're getting SSI and the two people get married, you would think that they would get twice the amount that one individual can get. No,
Nope,
no,
no,
they're
not
going
the
to
case.
penalize you for that. They penalize people for disabled people getting married, period.
Well, and the thing is, the thing to think about when the core of this rule was created, right?
Mhm.
It's a very patriarchal rule. And so that is, when you look at it and you kind of put that in your head, when you kind of put yourself back in time, like way, way back in time, that's really where it stems from. And we've advanced when it comes to the world of people with disabilities, right? We've come light years ahead where the inclusion efforts, right? In society, we've increased those inclusion efforts, and relationships are a big piece of that. Um, and so a lot of times I get that, from people, and they're like, well, why does this rule exist? Why hasn't it changed? It's because it's the gnomes. It's the gnomes in the basement. Okay.
Mhm.
And if we want things to change, right, we know we've got to lobby against them. Um, but that's another story for another day. But
Mhm.
just please, for my parents, because I'm sure I've got parents on who might have a CDB DAC or who has an adult child who is probably going to become a CDB DAC. So I want to make sure to make this rule very, 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 very known, and share this marriage rule with your friends, because I'm sure that you might have friends who have an adult child who's receiving a benefit from a parent. So please share that rule. It's very important. Okay, next slide. So, Medicaid. Okay, this is for my here in Texas people. Okay, so for those who are out of state, um, yes, they can still get Medicaid, but I can't tell you how they get Medicaid in the respective state that you might be in. I will tell you a secret though. In other states, it typically happens automatically, but in Texas, it doesn't. So in Texas, we say there's a form for that. So if a CDB DAC who was receiving SSI loses their SSI after becoming a CDB DAC, okay? So let's say their CDB DAC award, it trumps that SSI and kicks them off their SSI. And when you get kicked off the SSI, that kicks you off Medicaid, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, the world has ended. We just lost our Medicaid. No, that's not what happened. You ended up getting a higher cash benefit, and now you're on the Title II side, And now you will be able to get that Medicaid back, but you got to fill out the H1200. Now, if you've had benefits counseling before any of this happened, you already had that H1200 ready to go when you knew that you told your benefits counselor you were going to plan to retire in 2 years. And your benefits counselor said, hey, go ahead and have that H1200 ready to go because it's going to take 2 years to fill it out because it's that long. I joke. It is a long form, but it's not going to take you 2 years. But you do need to fill out an H1200, okay, to get the Medicaid back. And the reason why this is a thing is because CDB DACs are considered a group of former SSI recipients, specialized population group under Social Security. So that's why I said in other states, yes, the Medicaid is still, you can still receive it. You just have to know logistically how your state does it to get the Medicaid back. In other states, I've seen that it just happens automatically. In Texas, we do know that the H1200 has to be filled out. And on top of that H1200, you need to notate on the top of it, every few pages or so, put DAC on the top. And I say DAC because HHSC, they don't recognize the CDB piece. They recognize the DAC, the disabled adult child. So if you're here in Texas, that Medicaid stops because the SSI stopped because your adult child became a DAC, you're going to fill out that H1200 to get that Medicaid back and notate DAC on top of it. And that'll get it back. Now, here's something to consider. If you've got an adult child that never received SSI, okay, and that means that they may be a CDB DAC, but they never received SSI. So that means that they're not automatically eligible for the Medicaid, okay? So keep that in mind. You're like, wait, what? I'll say that one more time. If you have a CDB DAC that never received SSI, okay, that means that they're not automatically eligible to get Medicaid. Now, if we think about the amount though, okay, if we think about the amount, a combination to get the CDB DAC, it has to be at least $987. So let's say, for example, that the CDB DAC benefit is below that 987. Okay. What's going to end up happening is that individual will have some SSI to supplement what's not on the CDB DAC cash benefit. And so if you're receiving some SSI, and because we're in Texas, you'll automatically receive Medicaid. So it's just a different avenue. So you might have a CDB DAC benefit, for example. Let's say your CDB DAC benefit is $940. Okay, it's not 987 total. So you're going to have some SSI to make up for that, which means you've got both. And I think I saw in the chat that we have a situation where someone is receiving both, where they're getting a CDB DAC benefit and some SSI, which then means that they're eligible to receive Medicaid as well. Okay. Next slide.
There's a comment in the chat that there's a grace period that you will not lose Medicaid during the time you're applying with your H1200, or can you speak to that?
Yeah. Okay. So what happens typically? It'll look like that Medicaid has, and this depends on how long you've realized that a change has occurred. Typically, what happens in a CDB DAC situation, and I will say HHSC has gotten much better about catching our CDB DACs. And that's why we worked really hard with HHSC to say, hey, if we tell our folks, to get their application in, notate that DAC on the top, our HHSC folks and there are MEPD caseworkers, they know to look for that. And so that Medicaid, it shouldn't take long for that Medicaid to kick back on. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so disabled widowers, I don't see them often, but I do see them in Texas. I see them often enough. Some states don't see them at all, but we definitely see them here in Texas. So this is for those who are at least 50, not yet 65, and who have a disability and whose spouse has passed away. Okay. And they're able to draw a cash benefit from that spouse's work record. Now, those who are disabled widowers, okay, they do have Medicare essentially because that's attached to that Title II side, right? But if there are any disabled widowers who were on SSI prior, okay, prior to getting on, so this works the same as CDB DAX. If they were getting SSI before their disabled widower benefit started, they can too get Medicaid by using the H1200 because they are too considered to be in that specialized population for former SSI recipients. So that's something to note too, especially now that we're starting to see, our population, folks are aging and WIBs are becoming more common than they used to from when I started. So I wanted to make sure to notate that in there, especially because I may have some parents on there that might be wondering, would I be considered a disabled widower? Possibly, maybe.
Not to confuse things, but that's all based on the Pickle Amendment, right?
No, pickles are different. So pickles are the cost of living adjustment may move pickles over to getting DI. So yes, pickles are different. So sometimes pickles will get a higher cash benefit and it kicks their SSI off, but it's due to the cost of living adjustment, not being a disabled widower or a DAC.
Okay.
We could probably do a whole thing on pickles by themselves.
No, go on with this. This is what we're here to learn.
But please note though, for pickles, they too, if they were getting SSI, they could use the H1200 to get Medicaid back as well. They're in that special group of former SSI recipients as well. So let's talk about the stages of work, okay? The stages of work, there's 5 of them. There's 5 main stages. And it's important to just know that this exists. You don't necessarily have to know the deep ins and outs of how the stages of work work, if that makes sense. This is why we want you to get benefits counseling. Okay, next slide. So let's just jump in the 5 stages, all right? First one is the trial work period. Probably heard that before. The next one is the extended period of eligibility. Then we have our cessation and grace period. We have expedited reinstatement, and then we have our initial reinstatement period. So let's talk about the first stage, all right? The trial work period is a time, this is when individuals can test the waters, see if they can get back into the swing of working or even start working. But you can literally earn any amount in the trial work period and you still get your cash benefits. We love the trial work period. This is the time to go big. The trial work period is the time, if you want to earn $1 million in a month, you do it in your trial work period, okay? Now, let's talk about, it's a trial work period, right? So when we hear a period of time, right, that means there's a time limit on this trial work period. So it's 9 months within a rolling 60-month period, okay? So each month that qualifies towards a trial work period month, it's attached to a dollar amount if you go to the next bullet. And this year, the trial work period level is 1,160 or above. So let's say someone is in their trial work period, okay? They haven't exhausted all 9 months within their rolling 60-month period. If they earn this year at or above the 1160, they're going to trigger a trial work month. So the trial work period level, when someone is known to be in their trial work period for this year, if they still have trial work that can be used, the trial work period level for this year is 1,160 or more. And a lot of times when people will say, well, what if I earn, and I'm in my trial work period and I earn at 1,160? Social Security is going to say that is a trial work period month. It's at 160 or more. And this is another dollar amount that does change annually. Okay. Let's talk about stage 2. That is after the trial work period has completed. So after all 9 months have been exhausted. Okay. And the trial work period, note that this can jump around because it's 9 months within a rolling 60-month period. So that rolling has been happening. So it could jump around. Some people use their trial work period 9 months straight, but some people jump around. And that's why that 60-month period can roll around. Now, once the trial work period has completely been exhausted, the next stage of work happens, which is known as the extended period of eligibility, known as EPE. This is 36 months straight, and it happens the month after that trial work period has been completed. So this stage of work, 36 months or 3 years consecutive. Once it starts, it does not stop 36 months straight. This is where that all or nothing, remember I said earlier, and I said it was going to be tied to SGA. This is where the all or nothing comes in. All or nothing meaning you either get a cash benefit or you don't. In the EPE, if one earns at or above SGA, they're not eligible to receive a cash benefit. If they earn below SGA, they are eligible for their cash benefit. And the reason why I use the word eligible, okay, and you want to listen to me on this part. The reason why I say eligible is because Social Security is really good at sending checks even if you're not eligible to receive it. And then years later down the road, you get an overpayment notice and you're like, but they sent me the check. They sent it even though they knew that I wasn't supposed to have it? Yes, they did. So pay attention when I say that benefits counseling is so crucial, because this stage of work is where you really want to pay attention to your SGA factor, because you want to know if whatever given month where you're eligible to receive a cash benefit or you're not, you want to know if you're in your EPE, because that will help you be able, like, let's say when that overpayment notice comes, what typically happens, and I'm working backwards all the time when it comes to overpayment situations, we have to go back in time to see what happened in one's EPE and when it started and see if Social Security was right. If we don't have the supporting documentation to show that Social Security did make an error, guess what? We've got to roll with what Social Security says. Okay. And we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to do that. So even if you haven't had benefits counseling, right, yet, I want you to start gathering things and make sure to come for benefits counseling. And when I say benefits counseling, if you got an overpayment situation, you can reach out to me, but I'm going to need historical documentation to help you sort it out. Okay. Just want to put that note in there because overpayments are not easy to handle. Next slide.
It's not easy to handle from the consumer side either.
It's such a headache. It's such a headache. And that's why I use that term between being eligible to receive a cash benefit and not. It's important to know that. Now let's talk about that cessation and grace period. This is the third stage of work. This can happen, this will happen after the trial work period, and it's 3 months that go together. Okay, and it's directly tied to SGA as well. And the cessation and grace period months, they can happen during that extended period of eligibility, after the extended period of eligibility has ended, or it can happen never. It's directly tied to SGA. So if someone's never earned SGA or above after their trial work period, then they may not trigger their cessation and grace period. Next slide. So, expedited reinstatement. It is really hard to get completely off of Title II benefits. Someone who is terminated from Title II monthly cash benefits because of SGA, they can get back on pretty quickly if they lose their job or if they drop below SGA and their disability has not improved. So they're going off the original application of disability when we're talking about expedited reinstatement. Expedited reinstatement, it must be filed no later than 60 months or 5 years from the date a person was terminated from their Title II cash benefits. So all that is to say, even when you're terminated and you were like, I think I need to get my benefits back, you can request expedited reinstatement. Next slide. So when someone does successfully EXR back on, they will enter another stage of work known as the initial reinstatement period. And I got a crash course on learning about the initial reinstatement period when I first started doing benefits counseling and entering this world, because someone can be in their initial reinstatement period all the way up until their full retirement age. And I really like the initial reinstatement period, because how the initial reinstatement period works is the SJ matters during this time, but you're in your initial reinstatement period up to 24 months, and it doesn't have to be consecutive. You either get a cash benefit or you don't, depending on your SGA workflow, right? And once you get to the 24 months of receiving cash benefits, everything starts over again. You then get a new trial work period, a new EPE, a new cessation grace period, and another EXR and IRP. So it just restarts. And that can go up for 24 months. So I say that to say that is why it's really completely hard to get completely off of Title II benefits. Next slide, please. So work incentives, real quick on the Title II side, they are available. We've got our impairment-related work expenses. We have subsidies and special conditions. The point of using work incentives on the Title II side, you want to get enough dollar amount to keep you below SGA. That's the easiest I can put it. Next slide. So impairment-related work expense, it's the same as SSI. And when I say the same things that count as impairment-related work expenses will count on the SSI side, will count as impairment-related work expenses on the Title II side, okay? So paratransit, for example, let's say you're paying for that. That would be considered an impairment-related work expense. The point of combining some of these work incentives on the Title II side is to keep you below SGA, because when you're below SGA, that means your Title II cash benefit is still rolling. Next slide.
And if the person never earns over SGA, they're never going to go on to that trial work period or
cessation and grace.
okay.
Everyone gets a trial work period. That's that first stage of work.
But what if they're not working?
Or if they're not working, then no. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just earning they're just getting their benefit. Mm-hmm. So here's just a quick example. Vivian gets a 1,200 in SSDI. She's earning 1,800 a month, and that's over SGA, right? But after her trial work period, right, she's gonna trigger her cessation and grace. But you know what? She came to get some benefits counseling, and she told me that she spends about $400 a month. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna subtract that 400, and we're gonna subtract that 400 from her 1800, and that is going to allow her to be under SGA and keep her Title II cash benefit going. Okay, so SGA on the Title II side, you want to stay below SGA. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And SGA, remember, if you're statutorily blind, it's 2,700. If you're not statutorily blind, it's 1,620. Next slide. So subsidy and special condition are for those who are getting extra help on the job. That extra help can be from a coworker, it can be from a job coach, but that is if they are paying the job coach on their own, not if the job coach is being paid through from VR, or if it's being paid from one of the Medicaid waivers. They've got to be paying for it on their own or receiving natural help on the job. Next slide. So works pretty much the same way. In this situation, we're looking at the productivity in relation to how less productive without this job support coaching would this employee be. So we got to put a dollar amount on it. So in this situation, what we're looking at is that Damien's productivity level is about 25% less. Okay, and so what we do is we take 25% from how much he's earning. Okay, and then that gives us $450, and that's what we're going to take away from his earnings. And guess what? $1,350, he's below SGA, so his Title II cash benefit is going. So the point of work incentives on the Title II side, there's only two available, but the point of using them, and they can be combined, is to get enough dollar amount to pull someone below SGA to make their Title II benefit continue to go. And it's the same with special condition. It's just another form. Same kind of math. If there's a job coach involved, what we're looking at here, you are going off of what Damien is earning, not what he's paying the job coach. You go off of what Damien is earning times how many hours he works times 4.333, and that's what we're subtracting from his earnings. And in this one again, below 1620, cash benefit keeps rolling. Next slide. And I think it's just everything in a cute little nutshell.
There we
Title
go.
II works in stages. There's a lot of safety nets to keep things rolling, has provisions to get back on. That's that EXR that I talked about. And Medicare, you got to wait for it and you got to pay for it. But it does continue for a while, even when you've been terminated due to earnings.
Wow, Nehtra, so much fantastic information. And I, I want to have you back once a month because there's so many things that we need to dig into. And,
We do.
getting, somebody suggested in the chat box an entire class just talking about SSDI benefits or SGA or, there's just so much and we can talk about it for hours and hours. But I'll let everybody go for today. Thank you for being
Thank you
with us
guys so much.
for the hour. I'm sure that we're going to have more of these webinars with Nehtra, and you guys can definitely keep an eye out for that. You can look at our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our website to keep you up to date on what's coming up next. And if you want to schedule with Consolidated Planning Group, that would mean speaking with me or one of the advisors on my team. We can certainly help walk you through and let you know who you need to call and clarify some of this stuff for you. And if you need to contact Nehtra, just watch out for more. Do you want to share a contact information?
Just realized I usually have that last slide in there and I didn't. Oh my goodness.
Yes, we want to be able to reach out to you if we have extra questions that
No,
you.
and I see them. I see them in there. Look, I'm putting it in now. I'm so sorry, guys. I usually have that slide in there.
That is all right. So we'll make sure when we send out that webinar information, Nehtra, that we get your contact info in there as well.
Okay, yeah, and that too.
Okay, perfect. Fantastic. Everybody have a fantastic day. Enjoy your week. The weather here in Houston is gorgeous, so I hope it is wherever you are as well. And if you ever need anything, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. We are happy to help. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.